To the wildfires burning across Los Angeles now, where volunteers are working to provide essentials for people who've lost their homes. Chris Ferreira runs a not-for-profit organisation focused on disaster relief, the Ferreira Foundation, and he joins us now from Los Angeles. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys having me here.
It must be so utterly overwhelming at the moment. Where do you even begin to help people?
Well, it all starts off with a coordinated response from the government and NGO side, and then typically that meshes with the grassroots community aspect of things, and you have a further coordinated effort to help people.
Chris, have you or your family been personally affected by the fires there?
We have had to deal with air quality issues. In my particular section of Los Angeles that I'm in, we have a fire that's just a 5-minute drive away. Yeah, we definitely have been affected.
So tell us, how many people are you hoping to help? Because, you know, you've got over 100,000 people still evacuated. Thousands of homes have been burnt to the ground. So what's the goal? Where do you start?
Right now, the goal is to help manage with unsolicited donations management. It's a huge issue where essentially people that want to help but don't know how will bring supplies and drop them off in areas, but they may not necessarily be the types of items that are needed. What's really needed right now is donations of cash cards, monetary donations to the larger groups that can help distribute that to the people that need it. All of the supplies and everything that's being donated currently, though, we are coming up with a logistical plan so that way the people that are currently in short-term housing, like hotels or Airbnbs, once they're able to move into their longer-term temporary housing, like apartments and rented houses, they'll be able to have the items that they need for their home.
How many volunteers do you have working with you?
Well, I myself work with a number of different nonprofit partners. We, within my organization, are a very small, all-volunteer team, but at times we have spun up teams of up to 300 people.
It must be hard because I'd imagine some of these volunteers could be directly affected by these fires too, and their families as well. So it must be difficult, I guess, to try and keep people's spirits up when you're trying to help others too.
I'll tell you something about LA is that they come together. And right now you have the firefighters themselves going from fighting fires to when they get off shift, not even going home to see their families. They're going out to shelters and to other fire stations to continue volunteering with the relief efforts.
What's the feeling like in the community at the moment?
People are still, in a way, figuring things out. For some people, even though they have lived in California for a while, fires may be a new thing to them because perhaps they lived in another area or they just didn't experience this level of devastation and effect. But in terms of day-to-day life, things are carrying on pretty much as normal. It's a weird situation to be in. I'm essentially in a valley right now surrounded by 5 wildfires, but it's pretty much business as usual, other than the displaced people. You know, there's power outages, but, you know, people are going to work. People are, you know, finding ways to deal with the air quality issues, and life is continuing while the firefighters and the rest of the response continues.
Chris, you mentioned that what people need straight away are cash cards, essentially. Does that change as this crisis management unfolds and as the situation becomes clearer?
Yes. Disasters in general can change by the minute. But in terms of monetary funding and operational funding, funding for the people that were affected by the fires themselves, that generally does not change. But as the response moves into different phases, there will be adjustments of needs in terms of things like housing and equipment and volunteers to be able to do things. But in many of these areas, you can't set foot on one of these properties that's been burned. You can't literally put a single footprint on it, because then that can affect the person's insurance payouts.
Chris, thank you so much for joining us this morning on News Breakfast. We know it's going to be a really long road ahead, so everyone's thinking about those in LA. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd also just like to mention His Humble Hands, which is our nonprofit partner.